Hi everyone, welcome to Fluent in 3 Months. I'm Caitlin, and today I'm going to be talking about a really awesome book called Atomic Habits with my Fluent in 3 Month team member, Elizabeth. Hey Elizabeth.
Hi, Caitlin. We love this book. We love this book. Let me see, are my fingers in the way? We love this book. This is James Clear, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's all about building habits. It says an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And so I thought, what is language learning all about? It's about habits. It's about creating healthy habits to keep you motivated, to keep you learning, because the only way to fail at language learning is to stop language learning. And I couldn't think of anyone smarter and cooler than Caitlin to talk about this book with. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at Atomic Habits through the lens of a language learner and how we have created habits that work for us. I speak French and Spanish. I'm learning German, and these are to varying levels. Caitlin, tell me a little bit about your language learning journey before we go into Atomic Habits. What do you speak and what are you learning?
Yeah, so I speak Japanese conversationally, and I'm learning Spanish and Korean and starting to dabble just a little bit in Dutch. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I would not be able to do that without these habits. So this is really, really essential. So, because I know some people may be like, why are they talking about atomic habits? Because it doesn't seem, a lot of times when we think about books like this, they're like self-help books or like productivity books, and it doesn't seem like it would necessarily apply to language learning. But this is actually what makes or breaks language learning. And to be honest, I am so huge on habits. It's what I talk about all the time because I'm a personal trainer. So when I do personal training with my clients, I always give them a small habit every week. I actually implement a lot of these strategies with my clients to help them succeed and stick to fitness. And the same can be applied to languages. And in fact, it's really what helped me level up my Japanese to a conversational level. Don't you think, Elizabeth?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I didn't quite connect habits with language learning when I was first learning French successfully. My background is I attempted to learn a language 10 times before finding the Fluent in 3 Months blog. So I created habits, and then I actually read this book for the productivity. I was trying to get a handle on my schedules. And as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, I'm doing that already. Oh, I started to do that. That's why I'm able to learn this time and I wasn't able to learn before. But before we go into that, a quick plug. Where are you? rebelbeauty.com?
Oh, rebelheartbeauty.com. Yes, that's my blog. So yes.
rebelheartbeauty.com. Highly recommended. It's all about clean makeup and personal training, and very inspirational. Okay, so let's get into it. What we're going to talk about is we're each going to pick three of our favorite aspects for Atomic Habits and how it relates to language learning. And do you want to share your first one with us, Caitlin?
Sure. So my first one is the habit scorecard and assessment. And the reason why I'm saying this one is first because I actually think it should be the first one that you do, to be honest, which I actually made my own habit scorecard here when I was reading the book because it was so helpful to me. So I'm someone who I tend to take on too much and I overwhelm myself, and I think that everything is important. And so I have a really hard time prioritizing and making time for the things that I actually need to do. And that's why this resonated with me so much, because basically what you do is you write down every single thing that you do every day that is a habit, whether you realize it or not. And that includes like waking up, going to the bathroom when you wake up, getting in the shower, getting dressed, getting your coffee, like literally every single thing in your day. And then you mark it with either like an equal sign, a plus sign, or a minus sign, and that tells you that it's neutral, it's positive, or it's negative. And based on that, you assess where you can cut some things. For instance, for me, I actually wrote dinking around after waking up, which is a legit habit for me because I am so slow in the morning. I hate mornings, and I have a tendency to just kind of dink around, drink my coffee. I might watch an episode of Star Wars Clone Wars or Avatar The Last Airbender just to, I don't know, that's just what I do. And maybe part of that's too because based on like my schedule with my family, I stay up very late. So I work very late into the night. So the morning is when I chill. But I find that that's counterproductive because then it makes me more stressed throughout the day because then I'm like, oh, I didn't get started early enough. And it makes me more tired because I'm staying up late. So yeah, so the habit scorecard was super helpful for me for identifying things, how much I'm on social media and, just things where I could cut that and then add Japanese instead. So that's how it applies to language learning or whatever language, wherever I could cut, I would add in Spanish, or, if I'm learning Korean, I would add in Korean. If I'm doing a little bit of both, I might break it up, like Spanish in the morning, Japanese at night. And that was very helpful for me. And also it's interesting because, like I said, it helps you reflect on when you're most productive naturally. So because you just listed everything you do in the day, then you look at it and you go, okay, well, I tend to dink around a lot in the morning and I like to watch shows. Could I watch a Japanese show instead if that's what I prefer? And I think more clearly and at this time of day. So maybe I'll study at this time of day. So it was just things like that that were very insightful and really helped me. What do you think, Elizabeth?
I think I really want to start using the word dink more often in my everyday vocabulary. That is the best verb. I need to find out how to say dink in French and Spanish. Listen, audience, if you dink around, because I want to say dink, if you dink around a certain time of the day when you really feel like you should be productive, leave it in the comments, let us know. And also let us know if you would like a video specifically about ways to stop dinking around. I got to say dink like 4 times. I'm so happy.
I know. I love that you just incorporated this Midwestern word into your California speech. So because
is it Midwestern?
It's regional. Yes, it's regional dialects here. So sometimes I don't even realize I'm saying things that are so Midwestern, like ope. So you'll have to call me out on that. I say ope a
do
lot.
a whole video on just regional. But dink is beautiful. I'm not making fun of you. I actually love it, and I'm going to use it this morning for the rest of the day so that I can really solidify the word dink in my vocabulary, because it's necessary. It's because I'll tell you why, because to me, dinking around doesn't sound judgmental. It's just like, for sometimes there's like a weight to procrastination. I'm procrastinating. I'm not doing it enough. I should be getting this done. No, I was dinking around. I was dinking around,
Yeah.
and I need to fix that. So if you would like, audience members, a video about ways to keep yourself from dinking around, let us know in the comments, because if you tell us what kind of videos you want, we will make them. It's kind of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So if you comment, we will make it. And scorecard and assessment, I really relate to this because I am a morning person. I sometimes dink around in the morning, but I have more energy in the morning. So what I found is that I was saving some of my language learning for the evenings, and it wasn't getting done because when I looked at my habits, I realized that in the evenings is when I start to really slow down. And so telling my body and my brain that it needs to do work when it's not set up to do that is impossible. Without that assessment, I wouldn't know. So I love this. I love this idea. It can get a little overwhelming too. So all the things that we share here, you don't have to do every single one. Just do the one that sounds like it might be interesting to you, and then that success you can build on. And that reminds me of my first favorite theme or tip from the book Atomic Habits, which is the 2-minute rule. This is how I lived my life. It wasn't how I always lived my life. In my 20s, I would just push through everything. And now I believe in starting small and building on those successes. And that's what he says, start with small win and then eventually build. James mentions that you don't want to make a goal so gigantic that it's paralyzing to start. Some examples that he gave was, I'm going to run 3 miles versus I'm going to tie my running shoes. For us, it would be, I'm going to read before bed versus I'm going to read 1 page. So for me, what I did for starting small was I read 5 minutes in Spanish at night. Anybody can read for 5 minutes. I also set an alarm to tell me that it was time to go to sleep. Now I still dink around a little bit after the alarm. I just said dink again because it's such a wonderful word. I still dink around a little bit after I set the alarm. But it starts me thinking, okay, it's time to start resting. I need to get in bed so that I could read my book for 5 minutes. And it usually turns out to be much longer than that. Because of this start small rule, and because of Link, which is an application that helps you learn, read books in another language, and we'll link to that in the bottom. Because of this, I have read over 30 books in French in the last 3 years, and I think 3 or 4 books in Spanish. I might be wrong about that, so don't judge me if you find out later I only read 2. But I stopped counting in French because I felt like, okay, this is a success. This is what I can do. And I did this mostly by starting small. I'm just going to read for 5 minutes, and then it turned out to be a half hour. What do you think about the 2-minute rule?
Oh yeah, I love that. And I totally agree with you on that because I tend to, again, back to overwhelming myself, I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to spend X amount of time reading it. And then I get very brain dead sometimes, especially the harder it is. One thing that I started doing, I started implementing this as well right before bed, is every night before bed, I'm going to read 1 page of Cardcaptor Sakura, or 1 page. That's what it started with, was Cardcaptor Sakura, which is one of my favorite mangas. It's been out forever in Japanese, and they semi-recently started a new arc for it. And when I was in New York, I was able to get a whole bunch of them in Japanese. So but I was intimidated to read them for a while because I wasn't quite at that level yet with, like, especially all the kanji, and it has a lot of like magical vocab, I guess, stuff you wouldn't typically learn. So it was really hard, and I would be like, ah, okay, never mind, and I'd put it away. But instead, what I started doing was I started to set it on my nightstand every night, and then I just pick it up and I read literally 1 page. And because of that, I've made so much more progress getting through it. I enjoy it so much more because, yeah, it's only 1 page. If I feel up to it, I might read more, but I only have to read that 1 page. And sometimes 1 page literally will have, it's a comic book, right? So it might only have like 1 word bubble, but I still feel like that's a success. And then I can, look up any words I don't know really quickly and just make note of them. And then that's it. And because reading is so important, and you see a lot of the same grammar and vocab over and over again, that is a great method to start introducing it to make it less overwhelming as a beginner or even intermediate learner in a language. So I totally agree with that. The 2-minute rule is so helpful. And even for me, like, one thing I used to always say, like, just say 15 minutes, right? Because if you start with 15 minutes, that doesn't seem like that long, so it's super easy. 2 minutes is even better. If you're like, I'm only going to study for 2 minutes, chances are once you start doing it, you're going to be like, this is good, and you're going to feel successful, and you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to keep going. So and if you don't, well, you've got your 2 minutes, and maybe you'll do 2 minutes again later in the day, and then it compounds. So I love this rule.
It absolutely compounds. So the idea of the 2-minute rule in terms of language learning, for sure, is I'm just going to pick up that book for 2 minutes. It's a comic book. It's, maybe has 1 bubble. I'm just going to pick it up. And that picking it up, first, you end up accomplishing your 2-minute goal. Like, okay, I did this. I can do this. And then you build on the success. Tomorrow you do another 2 minutes. Let's say you do a week of 2 minutes. Eventually you will start doing 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I did it with Asamil, which is a grammar book. That's a great book, but it's it's a book about grammar. And I'm not a super duper grammar nerd. I like it at times. I like it in small doses. But I use the 2-minute rule, which is I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to open the book. I'm just going to do 2 minutes. And then usually I was like, well, I'll just finish the lesson. I'm already here. And now I've got my study time in for the day, and I've built a success that I can the next day go, oh, okay, I did that. I can do it again.
Yeah, and that's so important, and that's actually a really good point of how to use this, is to apply it to whatever part of language learning is hardest for you. So, obviously, if you love doing flashcards and vocab, like, don't apply it to that. You'll be willing to do more. But if grammar or writing, reading, or even speaking is hard, just aim for, I'm going to try for 2 minutes. And then that breaks it down and makes it so much easier, it's not so overwhelming then. And then over time, like you said, it gets easier, and then you can do more, and then you grow to not hate it, and you really start to see that compound effect where your skills improve.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, what's your next one? What's your next favorite piece?
Oh, my next favorite piece, I would have to say, is habit stacking. I absolutely love habit stacking. And when I talked to Benny and Shannon on the language hacking podcast, that was actually my language hack that I talked about, because it is like the revolutionary study method for me. And habit stacking is basically where you take a habit that you already have and you tack something else onto it. So for me, I love drinking my coffee in the morning. It is a very necessary thing. I cannot live without it. No one wants to see me try. So um, I definitely need it. So every morning I get up, I make my coffee, and I had already done this without realizing it, but I stacked the habit of pressing the button to turn on my coffee and then going and sitting down and meditating. And I'd already stacked these two habits together, just for my own well-being and mental health. It's very calming to me. So I would meditate for 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long I needed, and then I would come back and I would get my coffee, and then I realized, hey, I can stack this together with my language learning, because I realized that even though I am not typically a morning person, my brain is most fresh in the morning. And I tend to get very bogged down throughout the day. I like I said, I overwhelm myself a lot. My brain has a lot going into it. I have a lot of mommy, mommy, mommy throughout the day too, with my two little ones. So if I realized, if I do it in the morning, especially after meditating, I've cleared my brain. I am now calm and I can approach it in a more calm manner. So I stacked those three habits together. I get my coffee, then I sit and meditate, and then I pour my coffee, I make my drink, and then I sit and I study. And normally what I study first is I do drops, which is my favorite my favorite app for vocab. So I'll do that, or I might do kanji, whichever is my focus that day. And yeah, so I sit and I do that. I do it for 15 minutes, and then I get up, I go about my day, and I've already gotten done with my vocab study for the day or my kanji study for the day, and it's because I have it stacked that. And I've done that with a few other things too. It's another thing that I took notes on, like um, after I put my youngest son to bed, I go and I work out, and then I go and I take my shower. Those are my habits to stack it and make sure I get my workout in. And then after my shower, I sit down and I read that one page of Cardcaptor Sakura or whatever manga that I'm reading at the time. So I've just kind of stacked very simple habits that I already have, and especially ones that you enjoy helps so much, because if you enjoy it and you stack it with it, that makes it so much better. Like, I love my coffee, so obviously I look forward to studying vocab then, because I'm doing it with my coffee. So how do you feel about that, Elizabeth? Do you find that tip helpful?
So many. I think if we were to pick the most important tip, this would be it, in my opinion. Habit stacking. And I have a few things to say. Number one, yay, a fellow meditator.
Yes, yes.
I mean, everybody needs to sweep their head every now and then. And I don't mean like a sweep to the head like a karate, but
Yes.
more sweep the head, like clean that brain out so that it has some room for new creative thoughts. So hooray. And
Yes.
it's so essential. If you are suffering from anxiety, depression, meditation could really help you in your day. So please consider it. And one way that you can habit stack, if you're already meditating and you want to do language learning with your meditation, there is an app called Insight Meditation, which has guided meditations in many different languages. So I highly recommend that. It's a free app. I also want to say, yeah, I have some bravos and atta girls for you, Caitlin, because as a mom of young children, you are modeling how healthy humans live with your kids. I think a lot of times moms that have children 5 and under think that, well, I don't have time for language learning now. I'll do it when the kids get older, or I don't have time to take care of myself now. I'll do it when the kids are in school, or the kids, and what you're teaching your
Absolutely.
children is neglect yourself during difficult times, neglect yourself during busy, challenging times. And I don't mean having a kid is difficult, but it's difficult in terms of scheduling. Neglect yourself, and then you can pick yourself back, you can put yourself back together later. And that is not a healthy lifestyle. A healthy
Right.
lifestyle is mom gets to have some time to be creative, to grow some new neurons, to practice neuroplasticity, and look, mommy does this, and So eventually when they grow up, they can do that too. So I just want to name that for all the moms out there and the dads out there that are working hard and think that they don't have time for it. You can
Yes.
squeeze it in. You can squeeze it in. And so habit stacking for me, I wrote down a few too. And I love talking about our routines because I know for me, like I wanted to hear how other people were doing it. Well, at the time, it wasn't other people. I wanted to hear how people who had what I wanted were doing it because I couldn't learn a language. I tried, invested a lot of money and time without being able to speak it. So these idea of morning routines, they were like, I would hit the pause button and take a note of how that person did it and then figure out how I can do it. So I'll go through my morning routine as well and how I habit stack. I wake up in the morning and I brush my teeth. And if I'm dealing with a very new language, I'll have a list of 20 words that I'll just look at, like 20 German words that I'll look at while I'm brushing. And I'm not studying them, I'm just kind of touching them. Or if I have an error that I make all the time, the same time that I want to fix, I will do that during my toothbrushing time. Then I take my dog out to potty, and then we come back and I meditate. Now, I don't meditate normally in the morning with a different language. It's a silent meditation. Throughout the day, I may put on a guided meditation in another language like Spanish or French. I don't do it with brand new languages because it's just too much, but a language that I kind of have an idea. After that, I will either have an italki lesson, and my habit stack for that is I grab a cup of warm water and I go sit in my comfy chair, and the lesson is already scheduled, so it's just kind of what I do. When I wake up, I already have my workout clothes there, so either before the lesson or after the lesson, my dog and I will go for a walk. He's not leash trained right now, but we're working on it. So when he gets leash trained, I will go back into walking and listening to something in Spanish or French, so that I'm getting, right now I'm not listening to anything, I'm just paying attention so he doesn't eat any squirrels. He's got an addiction to squirrels. It's a problem that we're working on. But I will do, like, I'll have it stack. I love walking. I love moving my body. So why not add something I really like a story? I tend to listen to the same book over and over again. I think Johan from Francais Authentique mentioned, listen to something 20 times. And I'm like, all right, I can do that. So I listen to the same book 20 times, but it's new every time because I'm learning the language. What's another habit stack? Oh, everybody's got to do dishes. I happen to be the dishes person at my house. My husband does most of the cooking and prepping, and I do the dishes. And so I put Link on, again, that application I talked about, and I can listen to a book on tape while I'm washing the dishes. And so I'm getting this very passive way of adding language learning to my day. And my passive vocabulary is the vocabulary that you can understand, but you can't necessarily create, you can't produce it. That passive vocabulary is amazing because now I can understand what people are saying to me because I've been listening to Spanish, French, and German so often. I think that's it for habit stacking, but I can't say enough how important it is.
Yeah, and I would just like to throw a note out there too, because you had mentioned about like parents and things like that, and it's absolutely important to take care of yourself. And if this is something you really want, don't put it off. Instead, try to include your kids with it. And I know that depending on your child's personality, that can be a little more stressful or not. But you know, when I'm driving in the car, I will play Japanese Pod 101, and then my kids get exposed to that too. And then sometimes he'll be like, "What does this word mean?" And then I can tell him, and he starts to engage with the language as well and getting interested in it. And then throughout the day, I can start teaching him some phrases, and that gives me speaking practice and practice recalling it. And then, you know, just even though I'm very busy, when I fit it in is, you know, when I'm driving, I'll pop in the podcast, or when I'm cleaning, like you said. My husband does the dishes, but I do most of the other household cleaning. So I'll pop in my headphones and I'll get to cleaning the bathroom or the floors or whatever. And that way I can practice that and make sure that you're speaking along with that. So even though you're listening, it's very helpful that, you know, while you're cleaning or whatever and you're listening to the podcast, to practice that speaking and make that a habit too, that you stack onto it. But it's totally possible for anyone, and it is very important. So there's always ways we can find time, whether it's including someone else in our routine or not, our kids, our husband, whatever. But we can make it work. So, you know, you just gotta keep tweaking it. So.
Habit stack, that is the ultimate habit stacking. Driving your kids around while teaching them Japanese and listening. That's wonderful. And it made me
Yeah.
think of like, I got some waterproof earbuds, and so I swim while listening to my lessons.
Oh,
And
that's
every
excellent.
now, yeah, because moving the body, anytime you're doing something, it doesn't feel like such a chore. I do want to go back to this, like, I'm too busy to learn a language. We hear that a lot in the Fluent in 3
Hmm.
Months Challenge where I'm coaching. And you do have time. You absolutely have time. What I find that specifically Americans, and maybe it's all of modern culture, we work hard and then we come home and we just crash. And
Hmm.
that is not the way to live a life. So instead of watching, like for me, I haven't watched TV in English in probably like 90% of the time. It's in French or my other target language, my other target languages. And that sounds like impossible, but it's not. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I just want to watch a half hour of something mindless. Why
Hmm.
not Cobra Kai in Spanish? Why not? Why not Stranger Things in French? And I will do I want to do plugs for action and like those movies and series where everyone's going, run, stop, hurry, the monster. They're great because I always think like when I'm seeing the karate scene, which I normally don't watch in English, I'm always like, yay, all they're doing is grunting in Spanish and I'm getting my time in. So this counts. I feel like I'm cheating, but you can habit stack in a way like, oh, I would normally relax with TV. Okay, then do 20 minutes of a TV show that you've watched before, dubbed in your target language.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if it is a native show, that's even better because even if you are only passive listening, which has its limited capabilities in helping you learn the language, but you can still pick up the culture and the body language as well, which is super important. So,
Yeah, and dubbing can confuse people too. Like I'm the queen of watching things that are dubbed, but the subtitles and the dubbing are often different because they come from two different companies. So don't get tripped up when you watch something and the subtitles look different. Like if you're watching something in French and the subtitles are different than the words that they're saying, that's actually pretty normal. And you're just trying to get the gist of it when you're looking at subtitles. So my next favorite one, are you ready for this?
yes.
Okay, my next favorite one is reducing friction for good habits, increasing friction for bad habits. So
Amen.
yeah, right? Amen. So he talked about making the good habit easy, making the bad habit difficult. One example that he gave, or maybe I think I made this up, but it was something similar to his, is put your workout clothes on, then put your workout clothes out the night before. So for example, when I get up, I get into the clothes that I'm going to be going to my next activity. So I don't get up and put my comfy loungy clothes on. I get up and put my running attire on so that my brain is kind of, okay, this is what we're doing. For language learning, I set the alarm and then I put the Spanish reading material near my bedside. Or in the kitchen, if I'm going to be doing the dishes, I will have my laptop on the table and set up to the Spanish or whatever audiobook I'm going to be listening to. I'll have it set up so when I walk in, all I need to do is click play and we're good to go. We want to reduce that friction, make it as easy as possible. The increasing friction when you have a bad habit. So for my dinking around, I tend to, and I'm working on breaking this habit, is I used to check my emails before I meditated. So I'd brush my teeth, potty the dog, and then check my emails before sitting down, and I'd get sucked into a rabbit hole. Or I'd pick up my phone and I'd see like a notification, like a text message, and then I'd get sucked into text messages, and then I've dinked away. I don't know if I'm conjugating that correctly.
Yes,
I've
you
dinked
have.
away. Thank you. I've dinked away 30 minutes that I actually needed. And so what I started doing was putting my phone, I've scheduled it on do not disturb. So I've
Mhm.
increased the friction to get my text messages. So it's on do not disturb until about 8 o'clock in the morning. So that morning time from 6 to 8, it's not having bells and whistles telling me that I really need to fix something. It's completely silent, and that has increased the friction. If I want to check my text messages, if I want to check my email, I have to go into my phone and do 2 extra steps to turn the do not disturb off. So that's what increasing friction is for a bad habit. What do you think about reducing friction, increasing, and how have you used it in your language learning?
Oh yeah, I've definitely used this. But first, I'd just like to point out how well you're modeling learning new vocab, Elizabeth. So you did it for English, but just a point that you can do this for any language, Elizabeth. I can totally see how you pick up vocab now because you find a word that you like and you just start using it all the time, and that's such a great way to start doing that. So just kudos. I just had to
Thank you.
give you props for that.
My secret is out because I am, like, as we've said before, I'm not a very studious language learner.
Yeah.
It seems like osmosis, but it's not. And it's methods that I don't even know I'm doing. Like I tend to like words. So I want to use dink a bunch because it's fun to say. And so are words like fenêtre in, window in French. How often are you going to say it? But I love it. So I'm going to make every story I can about my fenêtre when I'm talking to my language exchange partner or my teacher. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, I just love that. So anyway, going back to our topic at hand here. So I already kind of mentioned that I do this with my manga at the end of the night. So instead of having it somewhere where it makes it harder to get it, I just started putting it on my nightstand. So that way it helps me to do that 2-minute rule of, picking it up, reading it. I've reduced the friction. If I'm already in bed and I forgot it, well, I'm not going to want to get back up and get it. But if it's right there, okay, yeah, I guess I'll do it, right? Another very simple thing that I've done is I turned the home screen on my phone to all language learning apps. So there's no email, there's no Chrome, there's no Facebook. To get to those, I have to actually go to all the apps and then scroll and find them. So that creates a lot more resistance. Whereas if I'm bored, then I can just be like, I look on my phone and I'm like, oh, well, here's my language learning apps, click, and then it makes that a little bit easier. So that's one way that I've reduced friction. Another way that I've increased friction is typically by removing the things that are distracting. So like that's why I brought up habit scorecards first, because if you know what is distracting to you, then you can work on increasing the friction in those areas, reducing the friction in the areas that you want to add. So, again, going back to like, I tend to have a really bad habit of scrolling social media. And part of this is because social media is part of my work when I'm posting content for the day, and I get on there, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna post my Instagram workout for the day, and then I see a cool new video by somebody else, and then I start watching it, and then I start scrolling, and then I'm gone, right? So removing them from my home screen does help. It also helps if you set I think they're called like well-being timers or something like that on your phone. So like Samsung, because I have the Samsung S20. If you click on that, it has an option under the settings to put like a digital detox or a digital well-being setting, and you can set time limits on each of the app that you're allowed to be on. So
Wow.
so if and they have other apps you can download for that too, but if it's like 30 minutes, that I'm allowed to be on Instagram. Well, if I sit there and I'm scrolling because I'm tired at the end of the day and I'm just scrolling, well, it's going to give me an alarm saying you're done with this for the day, and it closes it. And I actually think Instagram even has this, if I remember correctly, in the settings on Instagram itself now. So
Wow.
yeah, so they've made it, again, it's reduced the friction to set this process up, but increased the friction to continue to use the app. So those are some examples. Social media is like my biggest time waster every day. I don't have a lot of time, but when I do have time or I just need a break, I tend to get on there. And not only have I realized for myself that that's not helpful because it's not a break anymore, right? 2020 is crazy. But it's just, I could be doing something more productive. And while, like you were saying, sometimes language learning, especially at the end of the day, we don't have the mental capacity for it anymore. We may be totally wiped, but you can still do something else that is not so exhausting in the language, whether that's watching a TV show, whatever it is that you enjoy doing at the end of the night. So
Yeah, because drops and Duolingo are not that hard for your brain.
right.
Like I think David Sobel, our video editor, I have to mention him because I don't want to. He might have copyrighted this phrase, but he calls Duolingo Puolingo. He uses it in the restroom, which I think is hilarious. But I remember when I first discovered it was Duolingo and italki, because I didn't know the Fluent in 3 Months challenge existed at that time. And so I would use, like, every time I was in line, when I would normally have scrolled or checked my text messages, I would have done just a few questions on Duolingo. in my headset, or when I'm at the doctor's office, I'll go through a Duolingo lesson. It's easy, it's gamified, it's not hard, and it's got, maybe you get 3 more words while you're sitting there. And it's somehow more uplifting, because for me, it feels like I'm kind of getting away with some mindless behavior, but I'm doing mindless behavior that's actually going to help me, as opposed to scrolling. Because like you, I needed social media for my clinic, and then it became a part of my life, a large part of my life, and I was not happy with how much I was using it. So I really get that, there's no judgment on whether we use social media or not. People have to use it, but how can we give ourselves other ways of redirecting that energy when we just want to chill out for a little bit, 5 minutes, 2 minutes?
Right. And to this, I'm going to tie this back into what you were saying about the Fluent in 3 Month Challenge, but also with this, it does require you to be a little bit honest with yourself, right? Because unlike the other goals that are a little bit easier to implement, because it's something that you're more or less adding versus taking away, this requires you to kind of do some inner work. Like, is this really beneficial for me? Do I really feel happy when I do this? And if not, how can I increase the friction so I stop doing it? So, and sometimes that can be a little uncomfortable, right? Depending on what it is. So, but if you do that, you'll be a lot happier for it. And going back to the Fluent 3 Month Challenge, how you were saying that people always say that it's hard to find the time, especially we hear that in the Fluent 3 Month Challenge. And, I did the challenge too. I did it twice, so I know. And I will say, even for me, going into the challenge, I thought I had good study habits. And like you, I had studied my butt off in college, and I still failed to pass my JLPT. After 4 years of studying, I still failed. And I studied for hours every day leading up to it. But I had the wrong study habits, and it was like pushing it all into my brain as much as I could in one sitting, instead of breaking it down into small habits. And when you start the challenge, it is kind of overwhelming, because you have to kind of figure out these new study habits. You have to figure out how to make time for it. And that first month, is honestly the hardest, because you're not in the routine yet. And you're just like, oh my gosh, how do I make this work? And you're struggling to make it fit in your day. I tell you, if you do this tip right here before you even start the challenge, it will help you in those first 30 days so much. Because if you make it easier for yourself in whatever way you can, putting your notes or your book or your textbook or whatever you're using, put it right by your bedside, put it right by the coffee maker in the morning, use it in the bathroom, and whatever it is that you can reduce the friction, do that, and plan those routines ahead of time, because it is overwhelming with everything else you have to figure out at the beginning of the challenge. But if you can make the studying part as easy as possible, you'll win no matter what.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for
Yep.
that. Yeah, I would say that if you're thinking about doing the add one, oh gosh, it used to be the add one, the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge, this would be a great book to read right before you start. So like, if you sign up a month before, read this, because during the challenge you're going to be busy, so it's not a good idea to be reading something in English. But if you do it before, it would be great prep for the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge. But even without the Fluent in 3 Months Challenge, it is great prep for language learning. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because Caitlin, you're doing it, right? And I'm doing it now. But me 3 years ago and you in college, we didn't know how. And so when people hear us saying, like, I only have 3 languages, but I know that when I heard that from someone else before, I used to think that person is a genius. Not a genius. Just decided, I love language learning. I'm going to make some time for it. I'm going to figure out how. And I did it by intuitively doing some of these tips. And then when I started adding more of these tips to my life, my language learning got so much easier.
Yes, I totally agree. So, are you ready for the last one from me?
I'm ready. I could talk
Okay.
about this for hours with you, but I'm ready for the last one.
Okay, well, my third big strategy that I love from this book is setting up your environment for success. And this, I don't know if everyone feels this way like I do, but clutter stresses me out like no one's business. And I have two kids and they're both little. They're, 5 and a little over 1. And especially my 1-year-old right now, he's going around and he's pulling stuff out of every cabinet he can and throwing it everywhere. And that clutter stresses me out so bad. So I co-married my house. I've done it a couple times now, but I co-married it again more recently because we made changes. And one thing that I realized is that after reading this book, actually, this is what kind of triggered it, is that I would sit just wherever I could find space in the house, and I would sit and I would work, or I would sit and I would study. And I did not have a space dedicated to those things. And because of that, it made it very chaotic for me. Sometimes it would make it impossible to focus because there was too much going on around me, whether that's clutter or my family. And it was very stressful. It was getting to the point where literally like I was tight in my chest all the time because it was making me so anxious. Now that my youngest son is a little bit older, his nursery is a very small room, so we changed it. My oldest, he was like, I want bunk beds. I want to share a room with him. So we did that. Now they share a room, and now this is my office right here, and I have the space to work and to study and to do what I need to do and focus, and I cannot express how much that has helped. And I know not everybody is able to like change a whole room in their house to make an office, and you may not have that, but you can still make it to where you have like a space that is optimized for your study habits. So whether that's you decide your favorite chair in the house is where you always go sit to study, and that's all you do in that chair from that point forward. You've dedicated that is your study chair, and you sit in it, and you have it stacked, you grab coffee, whatever it is, you sit there and you study, and that spot becomes this sacred spot where you just study. And this is kind of true for many areas of life, like your bedroom is just for sleeping, or your desk is just for working. Training your brain to expect, okay, when I go to this spot, this is what I do every time I sit here. That is so, so helpful. And having it clean and picked up also helps. Maybe for some people that's less important than others, but for me, that is super important to try to keep it as clutter-free. And obviously, as a mom and being very busy, that's not always possible. But at least if I know that I'm in the spot where I do this, then I have trained my brain that, okay, this is study time, and it automatically goes, boop, Japanese mode, or boop, Korean mode, whatever. So that's been the really big thing for me. It's funny because reading that tip, I was already trying to do that because I'd already gotten into the KonMari method, right? And the life-changing habits of tidying up, and her show, like I love it. And it's all about simplifying and reducing waste and everything, which I love. But all of those things were good habits that I was already doing, but I hadn't actually created a space and environment for studying or for working. Like I just tidied my house, but not giving me that space. And I think that is so important. However you can fit it in, even if it's like every day, I go to the coffee shop and I order my coffee. So you know what, when I get my coffee, I'm going to spend 5 minutes there enjoying my coffee and studying, reading my book in Japanese for 5 minutes or whatever. If that works for you, if that's what you enjoy, like do that. It doesn't have to be in your home either, but you still want it to be accessible. So yeah, that's been a huge, huge breakthrough for me. So how do you feel about that, Elizabeth?
I love setting up your environment. I love the idea of it for life and for language learning. Before I forget, Marie Kondo's book, is it called The Life-Changing Habit of Tidying Up?
Yes.
Great book, very easy to read. We will put a link in the description box for that book. And then there's also another book called Getting Things Done, and I forget the name, David Allen, I think, and he talks about decluttering your to-do lists, because I too, I'm not about piles. Piles make me a little nuts. So one thing that I do for setting up my environment is I have a chair that I sit in for language learning, and I have my books. Everything is within reach. So my writing utensils, I can easily access my laptop if I want to do like Spanish Uncovered, which I'll also link in the, we're naming a number of tools, so we'll be sure to put the links in the description box so you can look at them yourself. But like,
yes, but we
Spanish
also did
Uncovered,
videos on those too.
That's right, we did videos on them. Do you think we can link? Let's see if we can
Yes.
link it somewhere.
Yes.
Look and see if there's videos on
So
Spanish Uncovered.
I always forget. I think it's the right side we have to point to. So yeah,
Is this,
but
am I pointing
no,
to the
the
right
other
side?
way, other way. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, this way. So yes, we did
We're
one
YouTube
on,
pros, you guys.
well, you're a YouTube pro. I'm still learning. I'm still dinking around with YouTube. But yes, so we'll link to some of those videos so that you can see as well. And where was I before I started going on about? Oh, yes. So creating a solid environment. My chair is really comfortable. I can sit cross-legged in it. It's a recliner, so I can put my legs up, I can put my legs down. And there's something about like settling into the space and like, okay, now my brain's gonna do that. It's got really good lighting. Like there's a tree that I can see, or rather a bush that I can see out my window, but not too distracting. And so it makes me want to come back to my language learning each time. I have two other environments that I like to learn in. Once a week, I'll take my dog to the park. I'll put a big comforter out, and I will just lay under a tree and do a little bit of language learning. And it's very easy. Like I'll be reading Harry Potter in my target language. Nothing too big. I don't want to bring a lot of accoutrements to the park, but I'll just chill out. And then I'm enjoying, after we've had a nice walk, we're enjoying the outside and the grass and the trees, which is, there's not a ton in Southern California. They call palm trees trees. They're not trees. Don't tell the palm trees, but they're not trees. So we go to the park and get some of that green, and then on top of that, get to, just touch the language nicely. That's setting up an environment. Another setting up environment is my husband and I love to take coffee house dates. And so we will go to the coffee house, we'll each bring a book. My book is almost always something to do with language learning. And then we'll take breaks and talk about what we're reading and what we're learning. And so it feels good. Like it's something that we actually enjoy. It's not a task. And that's all because we're setting up the environment for that. When I go to a coffee house with my beloved, I'm going to be reading something in the target language. So I love this tip. Setting up the environment is essential. And I agree with you. Bedrooms are for, resting, are for restoration. The kitchen is for eating, it's for digesting, and you can have other areas, but don't mix them. Don't like put your Frappuccino machine in your bedroom. It doesn't make any sense. It's bifurcating. So thank you for sharing that. Essential. And I recommend reading the Tidying Up. I read that book just as the pandemic happened, and I ended up getting rid of everything in my house except acupuncture needles, because I'm an acupuncturist, and toilet paper. That was all we had left. So highly recommend the book.
Yes.
Just kidding. We have more than toilet paper, but it was important for a time. So
we all know the need of toilet paper. So
we all know.
It was liquid gold there for a little while.
Right. I actually gave toilet paper to one of my friends as a birthday present. I wrapped it up, and she was happy.
Yes, I get this zero waste toilet paper called Who Gives a Crap, and yeah, I know it's a funny name, but they do little funny wrapping on the paper wrapping on the outside, and it actually has a little this is a gift for your, and then it has like a list of events and you can check it. And I wanted to give it to my mother-in-law's for her birthday, no, for Mother's Day, after that happened, because I was like, I had a whole bunch. I was like, here's some toilet paper. It's super special now. That's your gift. Just because it's so funny. And I say that because me and my mother-in-law have a very good joking relationship. That was not. So yeah, she would have found it funny. So
no, it's at the time it was liquid gold, and it was hilarious to be giving it. I wrapped it up all pretty, and she was like, "Thank you so." I gave her a diamond ring. So Marie Kondo, yes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. I'm dinking around with her name, but that's okay. Kondo.
Yes, kondo, because in Japanese it's ko, and I know it looks like condo, so we tend to pronounce it like that, but it's kondo. So and her name is actually Marie. Yes, Marie. Yes, if you listen to her on the show, she says, because she says it very fast, it sounds like Marie, but you can hear the Marie, the on the end when she says it, but then everyone goes, "Hi, Marie." So Anyway,
This is another good point because I've only read her book. I've never seen the show. I've never heard her pronounce her name either. So another tip is, yes, reading is really important, but you got to hear the language. You got to hear the
yes,
pronunciation. Otherwise, you're going to be making up all sorts of stuff like I just
yes.
did with that woman's name. So thank you.
No, everyone does it. So, all right. What's your last tip, Elizabeth?
My last tip is make it satisfying. These sound so, I don't know, they sound so pampery and like fluffy, but they're not. These little hints actually can change the way your language learning routine is. So again, like you, I tend to take on a lot, and I have to be careful. And so I've really worked on building self-compassion into all of my daily routines, my exercise routine, my language learning routine. I was raised in a military household where you just push through. You push through. I'm making like muscle. You can't see because my shirt's dark, but I'm making muscle gestures right now. And what happens when I push through that way is I'm not the happiest of people, and I tend to get sick easily. So I've learned that that's not going to work for me. I
100%.
enjoy being, what's that?
100%. Totally agree
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, I enjoy being gentle and kind and joyous. And I think that's possible when we offer self-compassion. If I want to be compassionate to others, I got to give it to myself. And making it satisfying is one of the ways to do that. So the story that we got from the book was a soap story. They were doing an experiment in a small village in Pakistan where there was a high incident of infections and I believe child mortality. The child mortality rate was really high. And it was mostly due to malnutrition and poor hygiene. So people were not washing their hands, or they were only washing one hand, or they were washing their hands with dirty water. And Procter and Gamble went in and said, we're going to do a test where we're going to find out whether antibacterial soap is better than normal soap. Spoiler alert, they're the same. They actually had no change. But having both control groups use soap on a daily basis, they educated them. They found that the infection rate did go down. What was most interesting is that after the experiment was over, 6 months later, the researchers went back and found that the majority of people were still using the soap. And when they asked why, some people said, I really like the smell of it. I like the way it lathers. So yes, it saved many children from dying, but one of the reasons that they kept doing this routine is because they enjoyed the experience. So what does that mean in language learning? Well, we're going to talk about flashcards. I hate flashcards. I don't just hate them, I want to hurt flashcards. I want to take them and rip them into little tiny pieces and spread them throughout the earth. And during grad school, I used flashcards a lot because for our state board exam, our medical state board exam, in order to get my license, I had to cram my 4-year master's degree into one test. So I was constantly we had so many flashcards, it covered our house. And so I thought that was the way you do it with language learning. So I tried, and it turns out I really don't like them. They make me uncomfortable, frustrated, annoyed. And so what I'll do is I'll have a session to do flashcards, and then I won't do them because I don't like them. And for me, there's no way to make flashcards satisfying. So I dumped them, and I said, I need to learn vocab. I love reading. I'm going to learn how to read in a foreign language. Like, what are the tips and tricks for doing that? And once I did that with Link and using a few like extensive reading models, which means you just read and you try to grasp the idea that's happening and you just keep going. Through doing that, I was satisfied. I was learning as much as I would have learned with flashcards. Other people will say, oh no, flashcards are very efficient and spaced repetition system is the only way to go. Yeah, it's a great system if you use it. If you don't use it, it has 0% effectiveness. And that's what was happening with me. So I had to find what was satisfying to me. Sitting down with a book, super satisfying. Another thing that I did was hard listening practice versus soft listening practice. So when I first started learning Spanish, it was hard to be walking and trying to listen to a book on tape or a link Spanish lesson. However, there are some soft Spanish lessons, so coffee break, Spanish, and also my favorite, Spanish Pod 101. They have podcast episodes that are partially in English about Spanish, and then they tell you a little bit about Spanish. And Spanish Pod 101 comes in, just put the language, German Pod 101. They have so many languages, so I highly recommend taking a look at them. We'll put a link. And I think I actually did a video for German Pod 101. So I'm pointing, I think, to the right. It's actually my left, but I think I'm pointing to the right. I think we'll be okay.
Yes.
You're going to click here, and it'll tell you what German Pod 101 is about. So what I would do is I would sandwich it. I would start my walk, which was satisfying. I would put on one Spanish Pod 101 lesson, and that's kind of easy breezy. And then I would do just, again, the 2-minute rule, just 2 minutes of hardcore Spanish only lesson from Link or a Spanish podcast that I was listening to. And it was hard for my brain. It hurt a little bit. And then I'd go right back to sandwiching it with finishing up the walk with another Spanish Pod 101 lesson, a nice, easy, breezy lesson. And this did a few things. First of all, it made it satisfying because the beginning and end were comfortable for me. And at the end, I was super satisfied that I actually got some Spanish in, some real hardcore Spanish, even though it was 2 minutes. Eventually, now I can listen to Spanish for an hour while I'm taking my walk, and it's not a problem. But I worked up to that, and now it's satisfying, but I worked up to that by making it satisfying in other ways. What do you think about making it satisfying, Caitlin?
Yeah, no, I agree, because that's one thing that I started to experience, especially actually during the Fluent in 3 Month Challenge the second time, when it was the Advanced Challenge, and I started getting very overwhelmed and feeling, I get very hard on myself, because, and I think a lot of us do this, where we tend to punish ourselves if we don't meet a goal, but we never reward ourselves when we do. And that's all that does, is instill the negative part of it instead of, promoting the positive. So when I was doing it, I was really trying to study very hard, get these videos done, study for the advanced topics that we were doing. And I wasn't doing anything fun. I was sitting there mostly doing like writing, vocab, grammar, right? And then I was talking to Shannon, the head language coach, and she had said about, well, I watch Terrace House all the time, and I talk about Terrace House literally all the time now because of this, but Terrace House is my favorite Japanese show, and there's tons of seasons, and it's so enjoyable. Like, it's a reality show, but it's like super lighthearted for the most part, and like it's nothing like our reality shows. And especially like the season in Karuizawa, it's like a very like mountain forest area, so it was like very like nature. Nature was all around all the time, and that was like super calming. But I was listening to the language, and I learned so much Japanese doing that. That's actually how I learned most of my Japanese, to be honest, because I would watch the show and I would take notes of the words, and then and typically I watched it a couple times. I'd watch it once without subtitles, and then I'd watch it once with, and then I would go and meet with my language exchange partner and start using some of those words. And that's really when she was like, wow, you're getting a lot better. Like your speech is so much more fluid, and like my pronunciation got better. But I made it satisfying. That was something that I enjoyed it. And it was a nice break. So now I implement that all the time. But also, outside of just picking the tasks that are satisfying, because sometimes we have to do the hard tasks, it's important to actually reward yourself. That is also how you can make it satisfying. Because if you don't like doing flashcards or whatever it is, and not necessarily flashcards, because like you said, you can find alternatives that make that a little bit better. But for me, like kanji, sometimes I go through phases where I love kanji, and then other times they start getting more complex and it starts becoming very complicated, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to break. If I do not give myself a reward for accomplishing studying the kanji, I will not do it. I will not keep my streak up, and then I'll eventually stop and get out of the habit of it, and then I have to start all over again. This has happened more times than I can count. What I do now instead is, if I achieve, my goal, whatever I set that to be, maybe I study it, maybe at first I reward myself every day after the study, or maybe it's once a week, whatever I need to stay motivated. I might be like, okay, because I did my kanji, I'm gonna have this little treat, this latte from the coffee shop, or whatever it is that you enjoy. Or sometimes what I do is I'll be like, if I do my kanji study, I will give myself 30 minutes to watch Star Wars Clone Wars. And that is literally, I love Star Wars, obviously. I mean, I think everyone knows this by now, but Clone Wars is my favorite. Like, it's my favorite of everything. It's so relaxing to watch for me because I've watched it, and it's just fun, and it's awesome, and it's short. It's like 20 minutes. So if I do the kanji, then I get the reward of watching Star Wars, but I don't get to watch Star Wars unless I do the kanji. So that way it makes it satisfying by like, oh yes, I accomplished it, now I can watch Star Wars, and then I'm more likely to do it again. So that's how I implement it versus actually making what I'm doing satisfying. Like sometimes I do, like I said with Terrace House, but I actually really like grammar and I like flashcards and I don't mind doing those things, but I do need to be less hard on myself and give myself a break and give myself a reward for doing it. So
Yeah, I love hearing that. Rewards are so important and they can be so small. So a few ways that I reward myself for completing a task in language learning is I bought some little itty bitty stickers and I put a sticker. Right now I'm using them just for running. Every time I run, I put a sticker on my calendar. But when I was really trying to get into the habit of language learning, I would put a sticker every time I did something for reading, every time I did something for writing, every time I did something for speaking, every time I did something for listening. And there was definitely some sort of neurotransmitter going off that made me feel like, oh, this is good. Another thing I do is when I'm done running, I don't do it as much now because I know running is becoming satisfying, which sounds insane, but okay. But when I after my run, I would do like a tiny little dance in my neighborhood, like I did it, ooh, ooh, and then I would just keep walking. But it was just that, like, we do that for kids, we do that for people we love. Why are we not doing it for ourselves? And
exactly.
another reward after running would be I'd come home and I'd be super thirsty and I would sit with my cup of water and be like, this is my reward. I did such a good job. And it sounds like, how is water? Let me tell you, when you're hot in Southern California, water is a treat. So there's these little ways that you can instill making things like, good job, good on me. I did this today. I think we need to say that more often, because what I hear from challengers mostly is, I sort of kind of got a yay today. I sort of kind of hit my goal, but I didn't do X, Y, Z. And it's like, did you study for 30 minutes and you committed to 30 minutes? Then you hit it. There's no sort of kind of. Stop judging yourself so harshly and start rewarding yourself.
Yes, we're oftentimes too hard on ourselves, and then we hit burnout, and it makes it unsustainable. So you got
That's
to be
right.
gentle on yourself. And I was just thinking of one other little hack that I've been doing lately. So I'm currently saving up for my trip to Japan, my first time ever getting to go whenever, of course, we can go. But one thing I'm doing right now is every time that I do I hit like a study goal or something like that, I transfer a little bit of money into my Japan savings fund. So, and I know obviously not everyone will be able to do that at all times in their life, but if you are planning on traveling when we're able to, and you know that that's kind of why you're learning the language, well then go ahead and be like, okay, I did my vocab today, so I'm going to transfer 50 cents in here, whatever you want it to be. Like it can be really small, so it's not like totally messing up your budget, but it helps because then you see, oh man, it's growing, and I'm this much closer to going, and you're this much closer here, but you're also this much closer here, right? Because you've studied, you're getting ready for your language and your travels. So that's something that I've been doing to kind of motivate me to stick not only to saving money to go to Japan, but also to stick to my studies. So
That is a brilliant idea. Even if it's like, 50 cents, $5, that's a brilliant idea. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for chatting with me about this. I've been dying to talk to you about Atomic Habits since I know we've both read it. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your wisdom today. Now, I'm going to ask you to do the outro because you remember all the important details and I'll be pointing at all the wrong directions. So would you mind doing the outro for us?
yes, that's right. So, and I just want to thank you too, Elizabeth, because also I had this book on my list forever to read, and I kept putting it off, but because you wanted to talk to me about it, I prioritized it. I moved it up on my list and I got it done. And this was honestly a very game changer book for me. So thank you for that. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us today. If you wanted to check out any of the resources we mentioned, the language learning apps, the programs, or you want to be able to check out Atomic Habits, make sure to check out the links in the description box below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If someone needs these study habits, make sure to share it with them and subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're always putting out great content like this, especially language learning content. So make sure that you do that and comment below. Like Elizabeth said, if there's a video you want us to do, let us know because we'll be happy to work on it. So that's it for today. Thank you guys. I'm Caitlin, my co-host today, Elizabeth.
Yay! Happy language learning, friends.
Thank you guys.